Hello, I'm Average Trey, and this is my Pac-Man World 2 80% speedrun in 41 minutes and 44 seconds. I'm making this post-commentary because I want to give some insight into what this run's all about. I skipped this intro cutscene because this game does allow you to skip cutscenes, and the first level Pac Village, you literally just leave the village. The main form of movement you'll see me use in this run is a knockoff of Sonic's Spin Dash, known as a Rev Roll. It is by far the best option for going fast, so I use it pretty much whenever I can. So pretty early in bare basics, you will see me use another mechanic known as butt bouncing. I butt bounce off the sign right here to avoid ledge grabbing. And with some well-timed and positioned rev rolls, I can avoid bouncing up, getting some airtime when I clear those gaps. This pack dot chain cannot be skipped, but there are some pack dot chains in the run which can be skipped later on. And I get a nice rev roll off this little slope to avoid most of this water, as swimming is pretty slow. And I skid a little bit past the ending here as I charged my rev roll a little bit too much, but it only cost like half a second. That was a pretty solid bare basics overall, I'd say. Canyon Chaos is essentially a series of well-positioned rev rolls. It's pretty easy to die here and lose runs, but luckily it's pretty early on. I get a nice bounce up to this ledge right here. And then coming up, you'll see an example of how butt bouncing extends your hitbox. I'm able to hit the very edge of this platform to cut the corner more by using a butt bounce. That's the only shrink power-up you'll see in the whole game. There's two in the whole game, but only one you'll see in the whole run, I guess. So immediately in Pac.Pond, there's no way to speed this section up, as this platform right here is on a cycle. And the first cycle is pretty free. And the movement up here I don't perform fully optimally because it is possible to skip all this water, known as waterless. But unfortunately I end up in the wrong position to go for it, so I opt to just land on the water and take the half second or so of time loss. Not a huge deal, but playing Pac.Pond optimally the whole way is actually really hard to master. But I do get a pretty solid ending section. So the upcoming boss fight, Blinky, is extremely broken and probably the most common question I get when I stream attempts. So basically how this boss fight works is that his invincibility frames refresh while the game is paused. So I wait till his invincibility frames run out, unpause and repause, get one hit in, rinse and repeat over and over again. And unfortunately I go for a fourth hit here, but I don't quite get it. And I charge my next rev roll, get my last 3 hits. And I get a pretty slow one cycle. A one cycle regardless, but a slower one cycle than I could have gotten because I had one extra pause. But still a good boss fight. I finished World 1 in just under 3 minutes. So the second world is forest themed, starting with what appears to be Bedoing Woods. It's actually Bedoing Woods, as the Bedoings are these trampoline target looking things. I do some fairly precise rev rolls to clear some of them. And then coming up, this is a blind rev roll, which saves about half a minute. Just one of many examples of how the camera is your biggest enemy in this game. A rev roll to the side of that ramp minimizes some airtime. I grab the power pellet to avoid these ghosts from throwing stuff at me. And I get pretty lucky at the end here, as none of the ghosts get in the way. Eating a ghost costs about 1 second, and sometimes they just group up at the end there and get in the way of you. And you just gotta eat one. Treewood Forest is kind of a bland name. I prefer the name Treywood personally. This is one of the harder levels to play with all the fastest strats. Doing a back jump to the side here saves a few frames. Another example of rev rolling off the side of ramps to avoid airtime right there. And I do some precise butt bounces to avoid taking any damage right here, as health management is crucial in this stage. It's possible to be fast enough to make that blade cycle that I just missed, but you gotta be super fast to make that. And right here is a pacifist strat. I stun that bear with my rev roll from the previous platform, and I avoid having to waste time trying to kill him before I move on. Unfortunately, climbing around this tree is unavoidable. There's no way to skip it. And the ending is pretty straightforward. So next up is Butane Pan. I immediately grab the metal suit here for safety, and then I do a skip by reveling off this little tree branch to that Bedoing. Butt bouncing a little bit early here cuts this corner a bit, and then doing a well-timed butt bounce down this slide makes you slide down much faster. This reveral looks pretty scary, but with the proper setup it's not too bad. Some more Bedoings. And then coming up as a sequence break, if you go fast enough, you can avoid having to turn the fire off here and end up with like 1 or 0 health left. Saves a pretty good chunk of time. And then rev rolling from before this rope, you can do a pretty precise jump to avoid that ledge grab. I've gotten better at that over time, but it's pretty finicky. And the ending here is exactly the same as in Treewood. For some reason they just copy pasted the ending here. I don't know, maybe they were lazy. Now Inky is the easiest boss fight in the game. I get 2 hits per rev roll by hugging against him on each phase. That being said, I'll still occasionally mess this boss fight up if my directional input sucks, but generally it'll go just fine. I finish up World 2 at a 701, which is pretty good. So now we're getting into the snowy levels of the game with Ice River Run. The level starts out with some fully charged rev rolls that are pretty straightforward, till we get to the icy part, and the ice mechanics in this game are a bit of a double-edged sword. They're really cool in the way that you can use the ice to essentially do full momentum jumps out of rev rolls like that. On the downside, if you mess up, it's very punishing and almost always either kills you or you slide down the level for a significant amount of time. It's very hard to recover from mistakes on the ice, but thankfully in this run I make no mistakes here. Right here I do some more jumps to maintain more of my speed for longer. And now this cliff section is pretty tough to do ledge grabless, but with a precise butt bounce it can be done. And I almost get hit by this enemy at the end, but I barely avoid him. And that was Ice River Run. So the next stage coming up, Avalanche Alley, is a pretty major run killer, typically. Much of the stage consists of these sections where the camera faces you, and you gotta just know where to go. I get a nice ice momentum jump right here, which lets me charge that rev roll a little bit shorter, saving some time. Now unfortunately I messed up my rev roll pattern a bit here and I have to slowly walk on this ice for a bit. Not a huge deal, but you know, every second counts. That probably cost me like a second and a half. And it is possible to skip this pack dot chain, but it barely even saves time, if anything. You'll pretty much only see that in low percent, and low percent is essentially getting a completion of this game with the minimum stuff collected. I get a rev roll off the side of this wall to avoid these falling platforms. Then a rev roll off this box so I can maintain rev roll speed down that ice. And unfortunately you cannot start a rev roll on the ice, so I gotta just run down here. So by timing a rev roll pretty well, we can actually abuse this wind boosting dude to boost across this section of the stage. And it could have gotten a bigger boost if I aligned that more properly, allowing that other ram to see me earlier, but unfortunately he doesn't see me until later. So now he gets in the way right here, but luckily I'm able to avoid him. And that was known as Pab Skip, which is cleverly named as you're a pussy ass bitch, or Pab if you don't go for it. Official name from Ruse. Now the final cave section is where things get pretty scary, as there are 3 wind boosts I utilize. Also a nice pack dot chain skip right there. That one's pretty simple. The second wind boost is pretty free. You really shouldn't die there if you know how to do it. But the last wind boost is pretty scary, as there's really no setup to avoid dying here. And I survive with a pretty far wind boost at that. And with that, that is Avalanche Alley. There's not a whole lot to say about Blade Mountain. There's a couple of ways to go faster in this stage. Basically, you want to go as straight as possible as often as possible, as this builds up a lot more speed. Also obviously avoid the icicles. And now PK Frenchie actually discovered you can avoid having to even jump on these first 2 ramps. You can just go right over them. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta explain in this level. I will let the rest of the stage speak for itself. And by the way, this was a pretty fast Blade Mountain for my standards. It was like 1/10 of a second off my best segment. Now in the Pinky boss fight, the camera is definitely your biggest enemy here. It's similar to Inky, except you gotta do more hits and there's more phases. It's 2 hits for the first 2 phases and 3 hits for the last 2. I get 1 hit and then Hugger for 2. And unfortunately I mess up right here as I do slightly improper control stick direction on the control stick. But I recover it without too much time loss. That cost me about 9 seconds, which was my biggest mistake of the whole run for the strats that I go for. Now World 4 is probably the hardest world casually, but probably the most fun for a speedrun. Into the Volcano is a big series of rev rolling off of parts of level geometry in a cool way. That's a big part of the speedrun, is just rev rolling off of whatever surface you can to clear sections of the level quickly, which can be pretty satisfying. I get a water boost right there. It's a little bit of a speed boost. And yeah, more butt bouncing to extend my hitbox, making that section pretty safe. And now I almost die right here, but I barely ledge grab and I'm okay. That kind of scared me, to be honest. Each rev roll is very deliberate and set up a certain way to minimize my chance of dying or worse. And now I try to clear that section and get to the next icy platform, but I realize I don't quite make it. So I do a quick turnaround and then I just continue on from there. And overall, that was a pretty solid Into the Volcano. Now, Volcano Panic contains the second biggest skip in the whole game, cutting out about 3.5 minutes of the whole level. I gotta get the metal Pac-Man suit, because I gotta jump into some lava to do a clip. I butt bounce in the lava against this wall, and then I do a rev roll at a certain time to clip down to the lava plane below. And I jump across this little plane to get to the end of the stage. Using a setup on my laser lemon, I land directly on the ending. It's a little bit riskier but faster than the usual VP skip method. There's a fairly risky rev roll to start things off in Magma Opus. In the next room, we sequence break it pretty heavily with a setup found by Abi. I can abuse the geometry of this platform to rev roll off of it and reach this upper ledge right here, which skips the whole puzzle in that room. I go out of my way to grab this metal Pac-Man suit, so I can skip some cycles later on. Here's some rev rolls found by PK Frenchie to speed this part up a little bit. And here's why I got the metal Pac-Man suit. I can just go across the lava here and avoid waiting for these little platforms to appear. Now the ending is pretty flashy. I can skip this slide section by jumping out to the right and then doing some butt bounces. My camera kind of freaks out here, but then I regain my bearings and finish the stage. The camera in this game is something else, I tell ya. Now Clyde is arguably the hardest boss fight in the whole game, both casually and in a speedrun. Especially since Clyde eye bounces were introduced, as you'll see pretty shortly. I bounce off of his eye hitbox right there and get the 2 hits. There's a small hitbox on his left eye which allows you to do that, but it's really precise. Currently there's no human viable setup to get the second phase eye bounce, but you do see that in Ruse's TAS of this game. And then I get 2 more hits. Even just getting 2 hits on each phase is really hard. Especially as the phases go on, his hitbox gets even smaller and smaller. And now there are eye bounce strats for 3rd and 4th phase that I opt to not go for, as I find them too hard. But if I went for those, I could potentially save 20 more seconds. I just find them too inconsistent for me. That being said, even just getting the 2 hits on 4th phase the usual way is a very tricky maneuver. It may look easy, but his hitbox is so small right now that I am glad I got these 2 hits, just like that. And now I do go for the 5th phase I-bounce using a setup from Ruse. On the 6th fireball, I run forward, run to the side, I-bounce, get the first hit, and then I barely get the 2nd hit. And a pretty solid Clyde boss fight for the strats that I go for. So the way this game is structured, the speedrun gets more and more interesting until you reach World 5, where the entertainment drops like a rock. The next 2 levels, Scuba Dooba and Shark Attack, are basically the same exact level. They're not truly auto-scrollers, they're more like on-the-rails kind of levels. And you gotta rhythmically press the B button to boost forward as often as possible. One improvement that could be made in the future of PMW2 speedruns is humans going for more mine boost setups. There's these things called mine boost where if you hit a mine intentionally and then boost into a 2nd mine, if you do it just right, you gain a pretty big forward boost of speed. And many of those are seen in Ruse's tasks of this game. However, mine boosting is very, very finicky, and going for them is pretty risky because you intentionally have to take damage going for it, and basically my thought process is just don't lose my health and get to the stage. So I play it safe and just boost forward as often as possible, avoiding mines. But yeah, I think in the future, mine boosting setups could make these stages more interesting, for sure. As they stand, they're pretty unreliable though. And I'm probably not going to say a whole lot. Enjoy this awesome music, I guess. And so now it's time for Shark Attack, and I wasn't joking, it's pretty much the same level. Except there's more sharks in it, I guess. And torpedoes. And at some point, I'm pretty sure I get like a small mine boost in this stage. It's very, very minor though, it almost saves no time. I'm not gonna really say anything until we get to it, so enjoy the music again for the time being, I guess. And there is the small mine boost. Like I said, it's pretty minor. You can get some crazy mine boost potentially, but we really got to find some better setups for those. I'm sure it can be done. So the next level, the yellow Pac Marine, is actually an 8-minute auto-scroller. Yes, 8 minutes. The key here is not dying, and you can go ahead and skip ahead to the timestamp 3340 if you want to skip this level. I'm not going to say anything over it, so if you want to watch it, go ahead, but I would recommend just skipping to 3340. It's your choice though. So along with Clyde, Mega Whale is another very tough boss fight. Essentially, there are 4 propellers on the back of Mega Whale that each take 9 hits from torpedoes. And the strat that I go for, I damage them all down to 1 health, then in one swift motion destroy all the blades in one sweep. That's known as a Whale 1 cycle. And the setup was found by Ruse, and there's really no way to describe how insanely hard this is, as you have such limited time to pull it off. But in this run, I clutch it out, and at this point my heart rate just shoots straight up to the moon. This was the first time I was on 41 pace out of Whale, and I really did not want to choke. Into World 6, which is sort of like the Ghost Island themed world. Haunted Boardwalk is a pretty easy stage for a hardened speedrunner, generally, but under the pressure of a really good paced run, your nerves are just holding you back. It's a very tough level under pressure. So you're on rollerblades, and for the most part, this is a pretty solid playthrough. I make a couple of pretty big mistakes. I think I lost like 5 seconds to my best segment from a couple of mistakes here. But my nerves were just so high, I was glad to just not die. The progression of this stage is pretty genius because it starts out with like platforms not falling down and pretty easy platforming. Then it gets into falling platforms with easy platforming. Then it gets to, once again, platforms not falling, but it's harder platforming. Then towards the end, it's falling platforms plus hard platforming combined. So it's a very well-made level, with additionally a kick-ass soundtrack, of course. And now this stair-step section, I kind of choke a bit. I thought I would die there for a second. My heart stopped. But I get over it, only losing about 2 seconds. Definitely some slop is expected on a run of this caliber. A nice corner cut here saves about 1 second. Also gotta watch your health too, as I've gotten hit twice already, only 2 more hits will kill me. Gotta watch out for some rogue bats. Like that one, which came pretty close. And yeah, now we got the end of the stage, kind of, where we got falling platforms with difficult platforming, and just the progression of difficulty just builds up your nerves even more. You especially don't want to die late in the level. And unfortunately, I don't quite make this corner cut. I have the ledge grab, which cost about 2 more seconds right there. Either way, you know, I didn't die. I made it through. Got hit right there. So I have 0 health left, and I jump over these ghosts for safety. And I survived Haunted Boardwalk with just some minor time loss. Moving on to night crawling. I immediately get the apple in this box, as it acts as a key for advancing in the level later on. And basically this whole level works on a universal cycle. As long as I get through the stage fast enough, I will always get the same split here. So I'm not too worried. I'm still nervous, but I'm not too worried as long as I don't die. It's a pretty lenient cycle for a player in my skill. And then I also get the cherry from the skeleton right here, as I gotta get it to open up this treasure chest. Then the apple is for that treasure chest. And then I progress on further. I skip some of these bedoings here with a rev roll across most of them. Then skip a couple more with some well-positioned bounces on them. Cherry once again needed there. Once you get one cherry, it works for any cherry treasure chest. Or any fruit for that matter. Just gotta get one of them. Now these platform cycles right here, this one and the next two, or sorry, this one and the next one are on a cycle that depends on when you get to this section. But strangely enough, the very last platform is the universal timer one. So I'll rev roll here. And this last platform cycle is a universal thing through the whole level. And I made the fastest cycle, so I will get the best possible time here. Butt bounce on that bridge and avoid the enemies, and there you go. I think it is theoretically possible to get a faster cycle if you're absolutely perfect, but no humans have made that cycle before. So Ghost Bayou is typically a super long level, but it contains the biggest skip in the entire game. This cheeky rev roll right here was found by Ruse, and it skips pretty much the entire level. However, the original GB skip was found by Paper Luigi 13, the original guy of this game. That method from Ruse saves about 11 seconds over the original method. I gotta hit that switch right there to spawn the final pack dot chain, and then backtrack to it to finish the stage. Though there is one more trick I gotta do. I'm gonna time a jump at the end of the pack dot chain into the ending of the level. And that saves about 5 seconds. It's known as wait skip. Usually when you skip the spooky text box, the game forces you to wait here for like 5 seconds for some reason before you can move to the ending. But by jumping at the end of the pack dot chain to the ending already, the stage just ends immediately and saves all that time. Now the final boss fight against Spooky uses a lot of stun lock abuse for the first 2 phases, and then a death abuse to reset up the stun lock for the second phase. I actually died 2 times intentionally. And this stun lock is very, very precise, but with enough practice it's not too bad. When you're super nervous though, it is pretty intense. I really do not want to mess these up. And now the third phase, you can technically do the same stun lock strat, but for some reason it's a lot harder on this phase. So in runs, what you want to do is get the first 2 hits, and then chase him down for the last 2 hits. And then I get a perfect chase down, and boom, there you have it. That is Pac-Man World 2 in 41:44. A very solid run that I'm very proud of. I would like to give some shoutouts to people who made this run possible for me. First and foremost, the Ruse Man, who currently goes by Ruse SR. I originally became interested in running this game back in summer 2014 when I came across his old tutorials. He's also tasked the game and held many records, and he's just an awesome player all around. Paper Luigi 13 for being the original person to really push this game. He pretty much solely took the run from sub 1 hour to sub 50 minutes to 45 minutes back in 2013. PK Frenchie for being a really good friend of mine for racing this game and streaming for 8 hours to get a Whale 1 cycle the first time. PLP, formerly known as Pikachu Likes Pie, for being a god of early game and still using Skype when everyone and their grandma uses Discord now. Abif for being a gamer and finding some surprisingly good setups for tricks in this game. Nacho Brado for being the hidden boss of Pac-Man World 2, being a super solid player that had a really good run at HDQ 2018. Dage4, your improvement in this game has been absolutely insane, and I wish you the best of luck with further improvement. JBuzzyB for initially doing a blind race with me before I picked this game up. Let it be known that JBuzz has beaten me in a race of this game. Joester, his sub 30 minute Pac-Man World 1 speedrun really pumped me up to achieve this. It's always inspiring to see someone achieve their dream time. And finally, shout out to the entire Pac-Man speedrunning community in the Pac-Man Speedrun Discord, and the rest of the runners of Pac-Man World 2. If you're considering running this game and watching this video, I would highly recommend it if you don't mind long auto-scrollers and you like games that are easy to get into. There are tons of good resources available on speedrun.com/PMW2, and the community in the Pac-Man speedrun Discord is always available to help out. I got a few links in the description below. The first one to a raw recording of this run, the second one to the live video from Twitch, the third one to the Pac-Man speedrun Discord, and finally the fourth one to the current leaderboards of this game on speedrun.com. As always, I've been Average Trey. I want to thank you for watching this post commentary. Peace.